Summit today. I'm happy to welcome back Jeff Cooper of Intel, who is going to talk about choosing the right FDO deployment model for your application. Jeff, I know you spoke earlier.
You can't stop me from talking. Here I go. Here we go.
This is the truth.
Yeah, let's all take a deep breath. And wow, this has been a really impressive set of solutions. I was so impressed to see Randy's talk on LF Edge and then Red Hat and VinCSS, three different vendors, all with source code available and solutions available for FDO. That's really wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's come a long way, and for you as the co-chair of the FIDO IoT Technical Working Group, has helped shepherd this work along with Gary from Qualcomm. It's got to feel really good too to see how we've gone from spec from concept to spec to really finding the right market fit for FDO, and then seeing companies productize this, and coming soon, of course,
Yeah.
certified products at scale. So it's a really exciting
Yes.
time for FDO as we look at the broader kind of edge computing industrial environment.
Right, and the breadth that we're seeing in there, we're seeing, Dell with servers, and then we're seeing these small devices in agriculture. We're seeing them in different continents. We're seeing devices in industrial. So it's really, really exciting to see how FDO is starting to spread out, and people are getting benefit from it in different areas. So that's really
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, super.
So I've
So it's
got
probably a
one more
good,
session.
yeah, it's a good segue into your session and talk about, so what do people do now? What's next? How do
Yeah.
people figure out how to take all this and make it actionable?
Right. Absolutely. So let me share. And I think the next step is uh, think about how would you choose a deployment model? We've got so much latitude with FDO, and what kind of websites are we able to support in here? So let's go back a little bit. This was the last slide that I showed, and we said FDO was very flexible. And then I said, well, but we know that solutions start simple. So you might start with, say, a single cloud solution, and you might end up with, then you might get a little bit more complicated. You might end up with multi-cloud and multi-tenant and closed networks and all kinds of things. And so we said FDO would stick with you. So let's talk about that a little bit. So here was the solution and that we described, and I'm not going to go through it all again, but I wanted to mention some of the pieces. So we have this DI protocol, device initialization protocol, that we use to initialize devices in manufacturing. And that generates an ownership voucher, which is this sort of ticket that allows you to decide which cloud is going to be the FDO owner and onboard the device. And then this ownership voucher actually is used only for one onboard, and then it actually invalidates itself so that if it was seen during the supply chain, it disappears. Then meanwhile, you'll have the device appear, and the device will use protocols to find the guy who's got the ownership voucher, and then he'll apply this transfer ownership 0 and 1 protocols with the rendezvous server, and then he'll use the transfer ownership 2 protocol. Sometimes we'll call it 2.2 if we're thinking of our kids in ballet class. That's an FDO joke, guys. And this will do all of the crypto stuff that we need to do. This will establish trust, and then we'll actually go ahead and start to do the transfer, and we'll have these FSIM protocols that gives us a lot of flexibility in doing that. So we've seen here, this was another slide that we showed earlier in the presentation, where we've seen how we can think about complexity of the deployment, right? That the architecture that you're going to use to deploy may become more and more sophisticated with time, or you may be already at some point on this and you may be moving, but we all know that you always get more sophisticated. So let's start to go through some of these situations. And I'm going to try to move yeah, there we go. I can now see my own screen. So here's a simple one. So we've got just one cloud, and we've got a set of devices that are going to go to that one cloud. So how is that going to happen? So we need an ownership voucher. We said we got to have an ownership voucher. We got to have a device. So here's your device in manufacturing. The device goes to where it's supposed to go. We have one cloud, so all the devices, all the ownership vouchers will go to that cloud. The device gets turned on. It'll run the protocols. We know we have the rendezvous protocol 2.1, and the rendezvous server can now be part of that individual cloud because we ordered it over here, so we can put the rendezvous server address in the ownership voucher. And we can then run through the 2.2 protocol, establish trust. We can run through the FSIMs. We can download everything. And now the device is actually operating within that cloud. Okay, so that's our simple case. Okay, what if we have two different clouds? So it could be that we've got, the European cloud and we've got the American cloud. Could be we have some kind of a legal restriction that we have to be in a certain national boundaries to match the company that we're in. Could be that we have we have the same device that's being deployed by different clouds. How would that work? Well, now we get a little bit smaller. So we have order processing. So we're ordering devices, and maybe we'll be ordering devices by geography, and we'll say, well, some of these devices are coming in one geography and some are coming to another. So we'd like them to go to different clouds, and we'll tell the manufacturer that that's where they want to go. As we say that, the manufacturer will ship the ownership vouchers to each cloud. And then as the devices appear, they'll go where the ownership voucher went, right? So the devices will use that rendezvous protocol to find where the ownership, the ownership voucher went and end up at the correct cloud for customer one or customer two. Customer cloud one, customer cloud two. Okay, so now we're all inside. We're in a closed network here. So now there's no internet. So how are we going to do that? Well, in that situation, the manufacturer can't send the ownership vouchers into your network, right? So could be that the ownership vouchers will end up on a customer portal for the manufacturer, or it could be that the manufacturer will email them to you. You say, wait a minute, email, that's not secure. Actually, the ownership vouchers are self-securing, so you can actually send them through email. They can only be used by the destination. And so here's this poor sap here who's typing on a computer, and he's going to have to pull them across and put them into the closed network. Of course, you got to get things into the closed network by hand. There's just nothing you can do about that. That's what it is. This device gets shipped to a place, gets put into the closed network again by hand. Now you're all in the closed network. All of the servers in the closed network, ownership voucher in the closed network, everything runs the same. So that's how you'd work in a closed network situation. Okay, what if you have this closed network, but then you also have multiple clouds out there? Can you do that? Well, okay, so now you've got, let's try one way of doing that. Let's say that we've got a server set up over here, and this server can be accessed by some devices that are roaming out on the internet and some devices that are actually on the customer premise. So your devices have to be shipped to the right place, and then the devices will go off and they'll access this common infrastructure. Okay. So let's go on now. Next idea, what if we have tenancy? Okay, well, you can cue the serious music. Tenancy is always hard. We have a cloud here and we've got multiple tenants, and each customer has to end up in the right tenant with his devices. Okay, so when you order, you have to know which tenant you're ordering for. And so the customer has to go in the cloud infrastructure. When you order a device, say you order a device for your cloud infrastructure, you would have to say, hey, I have a tenant ID. Maybe it's a number, maybe it's a name. You have to give your tenant ID. Maybe it's built into your login. And then the tenant ID is placed into the order that goes to the factory. And then the factory can actually take the tenant ID and there's a place for it in the ownership voucher. So that can be done actually even after manufacturing. A system integrator could actually put the tenant ID into the ownership voucher. It's in an extensible place, so it can be added later. But now when you read the ownership voucher, so of course we've only got one cloud multi-tenant, and so we have all of the ownership vouchers are going to be sent to the same place. So when the devices power on and execute transfer ownership 2, the cloud will see from the ownership voucher how to assign the device to a tenant, and the device will also receive its tenant ID. So here we go. We've got the orders coming in with tenant ID, and then the ownership vouchers are now labeled with tenant ID, and now the device appears and comes up and it goes into this transfer ownership 2 protocol, and the FSIMs will see the tenant ID and the cloud will pass the device over to the tenant infrastructure. So when the device is in service, it's now in service within the particular tenant that it was intended to be in. Okay, let's get a little bit more complicated here. So now we've got a closed network here. We have tenants over here, okay, and we have roaming over here. We can put that all together. Yeah, we can actually say, hey, I've got a closed network, so I need to go and take my ownership vouchers and push them into the network. We've got orders by tenant ID, so we can send back ownership vouchers with tenant ID. And then some of these guys are actually not even around. They're actually roaming, and they're pulling in from outside. So we can actually take all those things, all these ideas, and we can put them together and run them all at the same time. Let me talk about one more thing here. Let me talk a little bit about zero trust. So we talked about zero trust before, never trust, always verify. And this is why we have the ownership voucher. And I want to just to emphasize that because it's an important part that the ownership voucher is the thing that gives us zero trust. And it has this flexibility to be used in a variety of situations. So we talked about a single cloud deployment, multi-cloud deployment, multi-tenant architecture. And in all cases, the ownership voucher is our friend. It's the thing that actually makes these things happen. So the ownership voucher is the simple thing that you do in a single cloud network, very simple network that extends through to make it possible to do different kinds of network architectures. Now, what about the FDO credentials on the device? Well, let's see. Randy talked about FDO client. I think the Red Hat guys also talked about the FDO client. This is a relatively small client. It's let's say less than 100 kilobytes, probably smaller than that in some cases. And it can run on different operating systems. You might run it on an RTOS. You might run it under Linux. The sorts of things that people do with these IoT devices could be under other operating systems as well. And actually, we know it can run on just about any kind of processor. It requires some cryptography, but it doesn't require a lot of processing. And so it could be that you're doing, an MCU class processor here. Could be you're doing an Intel processor, an ARM processor. Could be going up to a server class processor. They'll all work. Now, where are you going to put the credentials? Well, in the manufacturing tool will give them to the device, and the device will have to store them somewhere. So where can you put them? Well, if you have an encrypted file system, you can put them in the encrypted file system. So if your encrypted file system is protected by a TPM, now the credentials are protected by the TPM. And so that's actually, one of the simple ways of doing it. That's actually a standard Linux configuration. If you don't have an encrypted file system, you can still store them in the file system. Then you need to worry about who's seeing the device, right? Because they're on the device, they're in clear text. So if somebody can actually go and pull the hard drive out of the device and they'd be able to copy your credentials, you wouldn't want that. That would mean that FDO is not able to protect you against somebody copying your credentials and pretending to be your device. So you'd want to have the protection of either the physical device or you'd want to have encryption in the file system. Where else can you put them? You could put them in NovRAM. You may have a NovRAM area on your device, especially if you're using an MCU. You might have a secure element. There are a variety of different kinds of secure elements. Some of them look a lot like TPMs. Some of them look a little bit different from TPMs, but they provide cryptography. And you're going to need the cryptography for FDO. So it's actually really useful to have a secure element. So secure element may have registers in it. You can put this information in the registers. And then if we go to sort of the granddaddy technology, that's the TPM interface. The TPM interface allows you, and TPM chips allow you to have a standard interface to cryptography. And FDO works very well with TPM. And in fact, we've actually been working to develop a spec specifically around the TPM. And one of the things we've been thinking about is, what if you put the FDO credentials into the device into the TPM before you put the TPM onto the board? Okay, so now imagine that you've got a machine that doesn't have FDO on it, and it does have a TPM. You can do this trick with a secure element too. But what if you had a device a computer and it doesn't support FDO, and there's the factory guy is coming in and you're saying, I want FDO on this device, and he's saying, oh, I got to put all these servers in my factory, I got to worry about all this stuff. Actually, maybe you can buy a TPM which actually has FDO in it already. So what if you took the TPM and you had the SI or even the TPM vendor put the FDO credentials into the TPM as a chip, right? And then you take the chip and you build it into the ODM board. And then you put the ownership voucher in the TPM to start off with. And as you manufacture the board, when you turn it on the first time, you extract the ownership voucher. And now you've got sort of an automated mechanism where you've factored out the FDO pieces out of your manufacturing technique. So that's something that we've been working on. And we actually have a spec called Securing FDO with the TPM. It talks about how to do this. It talks about how to store your credentials in the TPM, how to secure them, how to use them at the beginning of an operating system run. It's not the only way of storing your credentials. You can have a TPM, you can not have a TPM with FDO. But it's a common case, and we thought that it would be helpful. So if you're interested in it, please go to the FIDO Alliance website, and you'll see that this document is also there. And by the way, we're actually very interested in people reviewing this document. So if you're a technical person and you want to review it, please contact me, and we'll be very happy to have a review from you. So in conclusion, we've learned a lot about FDO. We've learned that it's very flexible, it's extensible, but it actually starts out relatively simple, and we have a wide range of deployment architectures that are supported, and we already have a wide range of implementations that are already available off the shelf for it. And we have the ability for customers to evolve their deployment architecture over time while still retaining compatibility with the devices using FDO's flexibility. And it also was designed to offer a high degree of security. It uses a lot of our security tricks, and you can use FDO to dovetail with the security that you've already got on your processor. And we've mentioned that we can go from MCU type class processors, say 32-bit MCUs, all the way up to server class processors. And we've also determined that you can have lots of different ideas of where you put your credentials. So the message we wanted to give you in this is you can use FDO today wherever you are in your deployment, and you can use FDO and it'll stay with you and keep you going for the future. And that's the message I had to give you. Thanks very much for all your time.
Jeff, thank you so much for that wrap up, and thanks for your efforts today and for all that you do for FIDO Alliance. It's all greatly appreciated. This is a super exciting way to wrap up 2023, frankly. There's so much happening with FDO, and I feel like now that we've launched a certification program, we can really start advancing FDO in the marketplace.
Yeah, and we have people who are actually really interested in certifying their devices. It's very exciting.
We certainly do. It's interesting because FIDO Alliance is primarily known for user authentication work and replacing passwords with passkeys and things like that, and just having a huge impact in the market. But I'll go to the mat and saying that what we are doing here with FDO stands to have just as much impact, if not more, for connected devices and for network devices, where it brings a lot of the same benefits of better security and better usability, but the added business benefit of easier and more cost-efficient deployability.
Yeah, in the last year or so, I've been using my FIDO key to get into my device, and it works really well. The only problem is I forget my password because I don't have to type it anymore, which of course is exactly what FIDO is trying to do. And now we're seeing in another part of the field, so that's where people are sitting there typing at their personal computers. Now in another part of the field, we have the Internet of Things. We have the deployment of computers all over the world. And these computers also have to come on and be reliable and get authenticated. And FDO is the way to get that done.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, like the array of use cases we've seen just today gives you a feel for how this can be deployed. And I think there's a lot of interesting emerging work in automotive. We saw the camera, the device angle, and of course the edge computing angle, and all the work that Dell and Red Hat are doing. So very bullish on 2024, and hope that everyone who attended today got a lot out of these sessions. I would like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar or today's Authenticate Virtual Summit on FDO. If you have any questions, you know how to reach us. And we'll look forward to seeing you at a future event and welcoming you into the broader FIDO community. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.